Good evening. This is Bobe's Hobby House, and tonight I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. Mr. A.W. Long is here with me tonight. Mr. Long is a model railroader, among other things. Mr. Long has retired a number of times, and he keeps on going. He's got a lot of things to do to occupy a lot of time, and a lot of this is dealing with young people. But I'd like to use tonight to kind of inspire some of the young people and just to touch on some history in the area. The layout that we have in front of us tonight was built by Mr. Long. I just asked Steve Rimmel just a little while ago if he recognized this location. And for those of you who may not recognize it, this is the intersection where Brent Lane, and Brent Lane's the street going across here, crosses the railroad track, the L&N railroad track. There's an overpass there now. We were just discussing that none of these buildings exist any longer. Mr. Long, what can you tell us about this scene?
Well, this is a scene that, the way I remember it in the 1920s, early 1920s when I was born, used to walk up and down Brent Lane. To the far side of us here is where you know as Palafox Highway, now Boulevard, which we knew as Flomaton Highway, and to my side here would be the Fairpass Highway, or what is known now as Davis Highway. The station right there is modeled after a picture that I got from T.T. Wentworth, and as I remember it. And the building here is the station master's house. The station master was named Spoons, and he was a Civil War veteran. And he, as far as I know, was a station master in Brent for years and years. He owned this building right here, which was a blacksmith shop and run by Dave Johnson. And the Johnson family was prominent in Brent at that day, and there's a lot of the relatives still living today. The little gray building over there was my granddad's store. And of course, my grandma had the clothes out on the line drying that day. And this building over here is not just like the scene used to be, but I was in a hurry getting through with it one time. But the Caraway people lived in a house similar to that. And as you can see, that was the days of the horse and buggies and people walking and riding Model Ts.
Notice there are no television antennas.
No television antennas, but the boy is flying a kite over here.
The boy's flying a kite. Yeah. Okay, and we were talking with my dad about this the other day, and you guys were talking about the little small houses out to one side here. This is something that brings back a lot of memories and a lot of stories that I've heard about.
Well, this one right here, the old country people said that they could tell you the time of the year by it, because if they knew how many was in the family and what page the serial number catalog was on. And the catalog used to be in that one right there. And of course, some of them had crescent-shaped doors, but I didn't put any crescent-shaped doors on it. But they were very essential items in a community at that time before they had the indoor water toilets and that. Okay,
the buildings that you've built on this are built pretty much from memory. These are not kits for the most part. These are small pieces of wood, and you've brought in a tremendous amount of detail. There are little things in there that we can see the cattle gaps, and you guys were talking the other day about how the trains were fenced in and the cows and cattle roamed free, which is a little different attitude than we have from it these days.
That was in the open range days when the cattle roamed the woods and that, and of course if one got on the railroad track and got killed, it was always the best cow in the neighborhood, so the railroad figured it was cheaper to fence the railroads than was to run over these pet cows and that.
So much of the detail that you've shown, several different types of fences, there's so much detail, and this is one of the fun things in the hobby, because you can go back and bring in some of your memories, or you can go back and do things as you'd like to do them. What kind of memories do you have that sort of go with this?
Well, of course, I've always been interested in trains, living by the railroad there when I was a boy, but the most pleasurable part, I think, of model railroading is the fact that there's so many different things that you can do. You don't have to be an expert, I guess, at any of them, but you can be at some. But you can tinker with electronics and electricity, or you can build buildings like this, or draw, paint pictures. It's just unbelievable the amount of different work that goes into model railroad that you can do. Of course, you can buy these things at the hobby shops and that, and the things you can't do, and then you can build those you can do. Mr. Bobe mentioned these houses, these shingles on it. I cut on my table saw, and they're individual shingles put on there one by one. And
that sounds like it would take a lot of time, but once you get a rhythm going, it moves along pretty quick.
It takes you about 2 nights, I guess, to put the roof on one of those buildings there.
Okay, we've got a call here. Let's see what we've got. You're on Bobe's Hobby House.
Mr. Bobe.
Yes.
I'd like to make a comment about you and then a comment about your guest, if I may I?
Sure.
Our son was down here just recently as a third-generation Navy pilot. And he went out to Bobe's Hobby House and bought a glider, a radio-controlled glider, and we had many good afternoons with him flying that thing. Now, may I make a comment or make a comment for your guest?
Sure.
My wife was born down here, and she was born not too far from that crossroads that you were just showing, and in a place called Oakfield. Do you remember that, sir?
Yes, I remember Oakfield, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Judge Maxwell?
Yes, right up the track from here, about 2 miles. Judge Maxwell had a little shed kind of on the railroad tracks, and the trains used to stop and pick him up when he wanted to go to Pensacola and back. I remember the little depot or little shed that they had out there by the railroad at that time. Yeah, it was up about 2 miles up from Brent Lane.
It's about 60 years ago, the 25th of this month, that my wife was born there.
Yeah.
And when we saw that, it just sort of, I never saw it at that time, obviously, but it just was quite interesting. And thank you so much for showing that tonight.
Thank you for the call. Appreciate that.
Bye.
Okay, this is one of the really dazzling things, because all of us, when we go over the Brent Lane overpass right now and you think, ho-hum, there's a train down there, and some people actually look over the side and see, hey, there goes a train. But to picture that intersection looking like this, and I've heard people complaining about traffic recently on the Brent Lane intersection, just think what it would have been today's traffic on this kind of a road. We've had a lot to complain about on that.
At this time, I've run a mile just to see an automobile go down the highway.
That was a big event.
That was a big event, that's right.
Okay, and we're showing several automobiles on this layout.
One other thing I might mention about the depot that people may not remember, but this was a flag stop. And if you got on a train at Pensacola, Flomaton, or points in between, well, the conductor would let the engineer know with a signal that he had a passenger get off at Brent and the train would stop. But if you wanted to board the train at Brent, the station master got out there and put up a sign, flag then for him, for the engineer to see. And if at nighttime you got out there in the middle of the track with an old hurricane lantern and swung it across the track, and the engineer would, when he recognized the flag either day or night, he'd blow one alarm blast on the engine, and then 2 short ones, and you knew that he had seen your flag, and he'd stop and pick you up. And of course the conductor would get out and help you load up and get on your train. You'd be on your way. And that's before the airplane times, of course, and you rode the train if you were going anywhere, or automobiles, one or the other.
Just the remarkable amount of detail. The longer you stop and look at one of these scenes that Mr. Long has done, the more detail you find. The boys flying the kite, the dogs in the dog houses, the wagon load of watermelons. I've heard a lot of tales about watermelons too, so that must have been a fun kind of a thing. Okay, we have a call here. You're on Bobe's Hobby House.
Yes, sir. I wanted to ask the gentleman if he remembers who the mechanic on those automobiles were in those days. Who
Test question.
May have been.
I knew a man that I think worked for the Buggy Works. His name was Bob Carraway. And he used to work on the Chevrolets, I think. Now, that's about all I can remember about the...
How about the Model A's and the Model T's?
No, I don't remember anybody that was a mechanic on those right offhand. I may know him, but I can't call it to hand right now.
Okay, I'll call you sometime and tell you who he is.
Okay. Thank you very much. You're on Bobe's Hobby House? Now you're on Bobe's Hobby House.
Yes. There is a model railroad on Allen Court off Hilburn Road off of Burgess. Do you know who operates that and who owns it? It's a miniature, and apparently it's a steam engine, but it's back in the woods, and it's a really neat little track.
I know there's some live steam activity in the area, but I'm not sure for sure who you're describing there. This is one of the things that we're finding in the model railroading. There are a lot of aspects to it. We have some people that do this, and of course what we're showing here tonight is the HO size. There are some people who do machine work. and manufacture live steam locomotives. And this is a very long-term project. Most of those locomotives involve years of construction. But there is some of that activity here in town. It's just that it's not very prevalent.
Oh, there's no specific club that you belong to like that, or that if you have an interest in...
There probably is. I believe we've got a phone number at the shop. If you'd like to give me a call down there, I think I can find that for you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Appreciate the call. Okay, we have... Okay, you're on Bobe's Hobby House.
The gentleman that can tell you about the little steam engine, Mr. Thurman Walker.
Mr. Walker. Did you know Thurman Walker?
No, I'm afraid I didn't.
Okay, Mr. Walker's been in the shop too. We've had a lot of folks. There are a lot of people that really have been excited by the steam locomotives, and of course, the romance of the railroad is such. You have Johnny Cash and people singing about it. The sounds, I've heard people talk about the engineer could be identified by the way he blew the whistle. Yeah. And there is a strong romance to see that much machinery going down the road with the side rods on the steam locomotives. And it's kind of a shame that young people growing up today are being exposed only to the boxy diesel locomotives, which, while there may be some romance to that, it's not nearly as exciting as the steam locomotives, and I'm sure I'll take a lot of abuse about that tomorrow. We do have a number of people who model diesel locomotives, and of course the young people growing up today, those are the only trains that they're really very acquainted with. The ones Mr. Long has done from memory, the whistle point signals, the station labels, the bushes, the shrubs, the gardens, or is that a farm? You draw a line between gardens and farms here?
Could be either one, I guess. It's just imagination, kind of.
We had the garden program on earlier, and I don't know if those are tomato plants that are having some problem. Okay, we're having a good time here taking a look at this, and on the next 15-minute segment, we're going to bring in a prop that shows you yellow pine lumbering when yellow pine was king here in this Pensacola area. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Hobby House. While you were gone, we changed the whole world right in front of you. And the scene that we have out now is a scene Mr. Long calls When Yellow Pine Was King. What we have here is one of the standard yellow pine forests. Is this a particular location here in town?
Just all imaginary. This is what I could imagine it being. I remember the old the ox carts and the oxen coming by my house in Brent, but then I would just imagine out in the woods farther away from the sawmill that they brought the logs to the railroad heads with the oxen, and then went from there to the sawmills with the engine like we have set up here.
Right, so on this corner over here you see men back in the woods cutting pine trees, and after the trees have fallen, then they cut them into lengths, and then you can progress down the road because the oxen over here are dragging those logs over to the railroad track. And at each point, the logs are lined up, and then you can see, what is that called, where they use the oxen to pull up the log up on the...
I don't know, they just got a chain, kind of a ramp that you can pull them up there on. I think that's the way they used to do it. I did ride one of the ox carts out in the woods one time when they cut the trees out there in, west of Brent.
Right.
But that place was close to the mill, so they hauled them all the way in with the ox carts there.
So this is pre-chainsaw and pre-trucks and all of those things.
Right.
We've got a lot of interesting variety here because you can see some of the trees have fallen. I think we have a dead tree over on the far side, and some of the dead pine needles are even visible here. Let me go to a line right here. You're on Bobe's Hobby House. You used to be on Bobe's Hobby House. Okay, Mr. Long, let's go back and take a look at how you made these. Mr. Long made all of these pine trees. Now, a pine tree, my experience has been that it's difficult to make the native pine trees, and Mr. Long has come up with a method for doing that.
Well, this is making the trunk of the tree out of a braided piece of wire, a stranded piece of wire, and you break out the different strands and come out and make the branches like you see here. And then I took and wrapped the trunk of it to give it a little more size and bulk here. And then you buy these pieces of foam material from the hobby house, like Bobe's Hobby House, and you attach them with a material they call goo. And that's how all these trees are made. And these little, what I try to make look like a palmetto, that's just a piece of the same wire all spread out with some sticky stuff on it, and then some foam grass and on it this is all foam that you buy, and you adhere it to the board with white glue, about half glue and half water.
Okay, and the bark on the tree?
And the bark on the tree is just sawdust that's just mixed with glue in that and stuck on there. Some dark sawdust that I cut in the, well, I dyed some of it actually to get the color to it. And that's how I made these trees up then. And these, of course, are bushes. And again, you use the same foam on there to make those. And you can make most anything you want to with these different materials that you can buy if you just sit down and start working on them. And
the scenery's generally been one of my favorite parts of the hobby. One of the handy things about it is it isn't horribly expensive. Would you put a price tag on a tree like this?
Well, when you make it yourself, I imagine for, I guess 4 or 5 cents you can make the tree. That's about all it costs.
There are not many things you can do for 4 or 5 cents anymore.
A bag of foam, I imagine one bag of foam, which is about $1.98, something like that. You can make all these trees with it.
Right. We do sell grass at Bobe's Hobby House, and that's one of the things it's used for, is not only the grass on the ground, but we use it for leaves on trees. The goo that you mentioned is a type of glue. We've also used the Elmer's or Tacky or some of the white glues on that, and that's been very successful. You've got some other ground covers, though, in a couple of places. What else have you used on the ground cover?
Some of it may be sawdust, but most of it is the different colors that you have there at your place. I believe that's one of the dark red kind of colors you had over there, the soil colors. And so this is the area that was cut over here with the stumps, and then they progressing back in the woods this way then. And the little engine there with the big stack on, I don't know about the people today, but the reason of the big balloon stack was to keep them setting the woods afire so bad. That was kind of a spark arrestor, and it was a wood-burning engine mostly in those times.
Since you had a lot of wood left over, that works out pretty well. You're on Bobe's Hobby House?
Yes, I believe you've been talking about the HO gauge, is that correct?
That's correct.
I have rather limited space, and I've done quite a bit of modeling dioramas and that type of thing, but due to my limited space, excuse me, I would like to get into the model railroading, but the HO gauge would just take up more room than I can spare. Can you offer any suggestions as to other gauges?
Well, there are smaller gauges, N scale, of course, and now even Z scale, which is incredibly tiny. They're not as readily available, however, particularly in this area, as the HO gauge. The HO seems to be one of the very popular things. One of the things I wanted to show tonight is how the diorama scenes can be made, and of course there's such a wide variety of things available in the HO scale. The chickens, the pigeons, the wallpaper, the rocking chair kits. These you can do a very small shelf type model that may or may not operate, and super detail that model so that you can go to just incredible lengths as far as detailing are concerned. So it depends on what part of the hobby you're really enjoying most of all.
Yeah, probably, judging from past experience with military models, probably building the diorama type thing itself. So I'll hang up and let you continue. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the call. Yeah, the military modeling is another group that uses a lot of the same technique. They also are very interested in the intense detail. Now, I can't see close enough to tell if your stumps have annual rings. Now, we can get down to incredible detail here. And I've noticed on your flat car, you've got another Biffy going there that's being transported to a new place.
Yeah.
You're on Bobe's Hobby House.
Well, I'd like to know why I didn't plant some new seedlings where I cut down the trees. We had trees growing.
Well, in that day and time, they weren't worried about that. They just cut the trees off and hauled them to the mill and made the yellow pine lumber, and then shipped most of it to Europe as export.
Well,
and then they left a few of the old rejects, you might say, in the woods, and if you've been out in the woods, you can still see some of them.
Well,
and these were seed trees, and they reforested the area, these seed trees did. In fact, where I live at home is a thick forest as thick as this of new trees that's grown there in the last 60 years from just natural reforestation from the seed pines that was left.
Oh, well, as long as they replace some of the trees that were cut down.
That was far from their thought at that time. They didn't have any idea of that at all. they had plenty of trees and they didn't want to plant anymore. They wanted to cut it down.
Well, put a few seedlings in.
Okay.
We'll do that.
Thank you. You're on Bobe's Hobby House.
I was wondering, on railroad boxcars, how much weathering is too much weathering on it?
That's generally a matter of personal taste. Some of the weathered boxcars look, in fact, if you go down to the actual railroad and look at some of the boxcars there, they're too weathered in many cases. If you made a model look like that, no one would believe it. So it's a matter of personal taste, like how much pollution do you prefer in the air, and that sort of thing. So that's a personal taste kind of a thing. Thank you. You're on Bobe's Hobby House.
Yes, how do you, are them real trees that you use for the cuts on the side of the water light?
The trees that are on the side are, what are these trees over here? That looks like a wooden piece. These are not wire pieces that you've made over here?
Yeah, no, they're wood. Those pieces are. The wires are these trees right here, but the logs and that are actually pieces of wood that I just cut out small and put some bark on them, you might say.
Is that hard to make, the train set light?
A little bit at a time. It works out pretty easy. We do have a lot of books available at the hobby shop, and I'd like to show you a few of those. Some of them are about scenery. Some are about track layouts and wiring. There are a lot of books available that you can read about your favorite part of the hobby.
Okay.
And that works out pretty successfully.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. We also have, in addition to the books, by the way, we don't get mad at people looking at the books at the place. We do prefer clean hands as we do it. But we've got a special be going on tomorrow. We've got some Atlas locomotives. These are extremely quiet running locomotives, and we're going to have a special sale on those this way. Okay, we're killing the glare on that. We're going to have a special sale on that tomorrow only, and that'll be about, what's the percentage? 45? 25. 25% off, and that's a tomorrow only kind of sale. My cue cards in the back are falling down here. So that'll be a thing if you want to rush out and get a really good locomotive that runs very quietly, very powerfully. These locomotives should pull in the neighborhood of probably 20, 25 cars. We also have on this Saturday for model railroad fans a model railroad swap meet. And this is going to be located, weather permitting, right outside the back door at Bobe's Hobby House under those nice big shady oak trees. Now what we do there is bring a lot of people out. If you have some train stuff that you want to swap or trade or sell, then we're going to have tables out there, and you can just pick those up and not the tables, put your stuff out on the tables and let everybody come by. We'll have a lot of model railroaders coming in from miles away, from Mobile, Pascagoula, New Orleans. A lot of folks come out to this swap meet. It only happens about twice a year, 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. It's all over by about 4:30 or so, and people begin to pack it up. So 2 till 5 on that one. If you'd like to just come down and swap stories about model railroading, you'll have all those folks there to talk to you about it. We're coming near the end now. Is this the wrap it up part? Okay. We can go ahead and keep on going a little bit further. Okay, we'll take the call on 2. You're on Bobe's Hobby House. We'll squeak you in here.
Tell me, why is it you cannot find the old 27 and the old gauge Lionel and Marks model railroads anymore?
Okay, let me answer that on the air here. We've got the 027 and Lionel and Marks are things that are predominantly Christmas time things, and they seem to come out at their best in the Christmas season, and then they go away afterwards. The HO scale seems to be the perennial modeler who goes on and on and on all year round, and those are the activities we try to stock. Since the majority of model railroading is done in HO scale, we've stocked the HO scale, and we have a good variety there. One of the best varieties for a long way around. Appreciate the call. And how are we doing for time now? We're going along pretty good here. Mr. Long, I've really enjoyed having you come out and point up some of these things. And by the way, Mr. Long has another one of these diorama layouts in the front of our store window. And this particular layout is the scenic highway layout. It's a scene showing some swimmers and some people out along scenic highway, the trains going by, the red clay bluffs. Nice detail on there. We've had a lot of people really enjoying those parts. Thanks again for coming to Bobe's Hobby House.